Christmas night still looks beautiful from the outside. The city glows with golden lights. Snow rests softly on rooftops. Laughter spills out of warm houses, and families gather around tables filled with food, love, and familiar traditions. From the top floor of my glass tower, I can see it all. I own half the skyline now. I sign deals worth millions without blinking. People call me powerful. Some call me lucky. Others call me a genius. But standing here alone, staring down at the city, I know the truth. Money can buy silence, not peace. Every Christmas, no matter how high I rise, my mind travels back to one night. One dinner. One moment my father believed ruined my life forever. I was younger then, broke in ways money hadn't yet taught me how to hide. That Christmas dinner was meant to be perfect. The kind families show off in photos. The kind my father cared deeply about. Reputation mattered to him more than warmth. Appearances more than understanding. To him, I was already a disappointment. He believed success followed one straight road, his road. Anything outside, it was failure. And that night, under soft lights and polite smiles, he decided to make his judgment final. I remember the table, the decorations, the way my chest felt tight even before things went wrong. I didn't know that a single conversation could cut a life in half. Before and after. Who I was, and who I would be forced to become. Today, people bow their heads when they hear my name. Back then, I couldn't even lift my own. My father's words that night didn't just hurt me. They erased me. In his eyes, I was finished. A mistake he wanted to correct. A future he wanted to bury before it embarrassed him further. While I walked away from that table, I didn't just leave a house. I lost my family, my safety, my place in the world. He thought that Christmas dinner destroyed my life. For a long time, I believed him. Yet here I am now, richer than he ever dreamed, stronger than he ever imagined, and lonelier than anyone knows. Sometimes I wonder if that night was a curse meant to break me or a fire meant to forge me. The question has followed me through every sleepless night, every risk I took, every door slammed in my face. Because the truth is simple and cruel. The night my father thought he ended my future was the night my destiny quietly began. Long before that Christmas night shattered everything, my life was shaped by rules I never agreed to, but was expected to follow. In our house, success had a very clear meaning. It was not happiness. It was not peace. It was prestige, power, control. My father believed these things were the only proof a person mattered. He measured life the way he measured business deals, by numbers, titles, and what others whispered behind closed doors. From a young age, I learned to sit straight, speak carefully, and never question him. Obedience was respect in his world. Silence was safety. Love was given only when expectations were met. My dreams were different, though I rarely spoke them out loud. I wanted freedom more than status. Purpose more than praise. While my father planned my future like a project, I imagined a life built on my own choices. I was curious, creative, and restless. To him, that meant weak, unfocused, unreliable. Every small failure felt larger under his gaze. A grade that wasn't perfect, a decision that wasn't approved. Each one added another crack between us. He never shouted at first. Disappointment was quieter and sharper. A look, a sigh, a pause that said more than words ever could. My mother noticed everything. She tried to soften the silence with gentle smiles and warm meals. Sometimes she defended me in small ways, careful not to trigger his anger. But her love had limits. She lived between us, hoping peace would come if everyone stayed quiet long enough. If I had siblings, they learned quickly how to survive, agree, succeed, disappear. We all felt it. The house was full, yet heavy. No one truly spoke. No one truly listened. As years passed, the distance between my father and me grew wider. Conversations became cold and brief. Praise disappeared completely. I could feel him giving up on me, little by little. I was no longer his pride. I was his worry, his mistake. And then Christmas would come. The season forced us together like nothing else. The decorations went up. The house looked perfect, and guests were invited. On the outside, we looked like a family blessed with everything. Inside, every smile felt tight. Every laugh sounded forced. I felt the pressure most during those weeks. Christmas was my father's stage. He wanted to present success, order, and perfection. And I knew, without him saying it, that I didn't fit the picture he wanted to show the world. Each passing day brought more tension, more silence, more disappointment hanging in the air like a storm waiting to break. I didn't know then that the coming Christmas dinner would be the final test. I still believed, foolishly, that love might win. That family would choose understanding over pride. I was wrong, and as the snow began to fall and the lights filled the streets, something far darker was preparing to unfold inside our home. Something that would change my life forever. The house looked perfect that night. Every light was on. Gold and red decorations filled every corner. The dining table stretched long and proud, covered in white cloth, shining plates, and carefully placed candles. Laughter echoed through the rooms as relatives arrived, dressed well, smiling wide. From the outside, it was the kind of Christmas people envied. Inside my chest, something felt wrong. I sat at the table, surrounded by family, yet painfully alone. My father sat at the head, as always. Calm, confident, in control. He spoke easily with guests, telling stories of success, work, and respect. Every word was measured. Every smile was sharp. I could feel his eyes pass over me again and again, not with warmth, but with judgment. Dinner began. Plates were filled. Glasses clinked. People talked about plans, achievements, and the future. Each question felt like a test. Each glance toward my father made my stomach tighten. I tried to stay quiet, hoping the night would pass without trouble. But my father had other plans. As the meal went on, his silence grew heavier. His smile faded. The room slowly noticed a shift. Then, without warning, he spoke, not softly, not kindly, but loud enough for everyone to hear. The table went still. He began talking about responsibility, about honor, about the shame of wasted potential. At first, people nodded, unsure where this was going. Then his words turned sharper, more personal. Every sentence aimed directly at me. My heart pounded. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. Then came the moment that shattered everything. In front of everyone, family, relatives, guests, my father declared that I had failed him, failed the family, failed the future he had planned. He spoke as if I were not even human anymore, but a problem that needed to be erased. He made it clear I was no longer part of his vision, no longer worth his name, no longer his responsibility. The room froze. Forks stopped midair. Smiles disappeared. No one dared to speak. My mother stared down at her plate, her hands shaking. Others looked away, pretending not to see. Some watched in silence, curiosity mixing with pity. No one defended me. I felt my face burn with shame. My ears rang. The world narrowed to the sound of my own breathing. In that moment, I didn't just feel embarrassed. I felt erased, like I'd been pushed out of existence. My father leaned back, calm again. To him, this was not cruelty. This was correction. He believed he was ending a mistake. He believed this humiliation would teach me a lesson, or destroy me enough to disappear quietly. I stood up slowly. My legs felt weak, but something inside me had gone numb. I looked around the table one last time, searching for a single face willing to stop me, to say something, to show me I still mattered. There was nothing, so I turned away. I walked out of that house with the sound of laughter returning behind me, like nothing had happened. The door closed, and the cold night air hit my face. Christmas lights blinked softly outside, mocking the darkness inside me. I had no coat, no plan, no home. Behind that door, my father believed it was over. He believed my life had ended at that table, that without his approval, I was nothing, that the world would crush me, and I would come crawling back, or disappear completely. As I walked alone into the night, tears froze on my cheeks. I believed him too. I didn't know then that this moment of rejection was not the end. It was the beginning of my exile, and the first step toward becoming someone he could never control again. The night swallowed me whole. I walked until my feet ached and my hands went numb. The streets were alive with Christmas cheer, music drifting from shops, couples laughing, children tugging at their parents' hands. Everywhere I looked, people belonged somewhere. I belonged nowhere. I had no keys in my pocket, no home to return to. The house I grew up in was closed to me now, not by locked doors, but by a decision my father made with calm certainty. In one night, I lost more than a roof. I lost protection. I lost my name. I lost the future I was raised to believe was already written for me. The next days blurred together. I slept where I could. I ate when I could. Every morning, I woke with the same heavy thought. This is my life now. The world felt colder during Christmas, like joy itself was something I was no longer allowed to touch. People smiled at strangers. They didn't see me. I became invisible. Money ran out quickly. Pride followed soon after. I took any work I could find, jobs that paid little and asked much. Long hours, cold hands, tired bones. I told myself it was temporary, but each night, doubt crept closer. Maybe this is all I deserve. My father's voice lived inside my head. Every mistake echoed his judgment. Every failure proved him right. I questioned everything about myself. My choices, my dreams, my worth. I wondered if I was weak, if I'd been foolish to ever believe I could live differently. There were moments I nearly gave up. I would stand alone at night, watching families through bright windows, feeling like a ghost looking in on a life that was never meant for me. Christmas songs played everywhere, but they sounded hollow. The season of love felt like a cruel reminder of what I had lost. Still, I kept going. Not because I was strong, but because stopping felt worse. Something small began to change inside me. It wasn't hope. Not yet. It was quieter than that. A stubborn refusal to disappear. A thought that whispered, if this is the bottom, then I have nothing left to lose. I learned to survive without comfort, without approval, without anyone waiting for me at the end of the day. Each hardship stripped something away, but it also taught me something. I learned how to endure, how to observe, how to stand alone. Slowly, the shame began to turn into something else. Anger faded. Sadness remained. But beneath it, a spark began to form. A quiet defiance. I stopped asking if my father was right. I started asking if his rules were ever meant for me. I still believed my life was ruined. But somewhere deep inside, buried under exhaustion and fear, a new idea was taking shape, one I didn't fully understand yet. The idea that maybe being cast out wasn't the end of my story. Maybe it was the first time my life truly belonged to me. As winter deepened and the world moved on, I stood in the cold, unaware that this silent struggle was preparing me for a choice, one that would decide whether I broke completely or began to rise. There's a moment in every fall when you stop asking how much lower you can go because you've reached the bottom. For me, that moment came quietly. No shouting, no dramatic collapse, just a small, dark room and the sound of my own breathing. I had almost nothing left. My pockets were empty. My body was tired. My mind felt worn thin from too many nights spent wondering how I had ended up here. I counted my coins once, then again, hoping I had miscounted. I hadn't. Hunger became familiar. So did shame. I stopped making plans because plans required hope, and hope felt dangerous. Every failure from the past replayed in my head like a cruel lesson. My father's voice was always there, steady and cold, reminding me that this was exactly how my story was supposed to end. For a long time, I lived only to prove him wrong. Every job I took, every step I made forward, carried his shadow. I imagined his reaction if he saw me succeed. I imagined his regret. Then he burned inside me, but it also drained me. Living for someone else's approval was slowly killing me. One night, alone and exhausted, something finally broke. I asked myself a question I had been avoiding. What if his approval never comes? The thought was terrifying, but it was also freeing. I realized then that my father might never change. He might never admit his mistake. He might never look at me with pride. And waiting for that moment had kept me trapped, even after he cast me out. That night, sitting on the edge of my bed, I made a quiet decision. I would stop living to prove him wrong. I would start living to prove myself right. The shift was small, but it changed everything. I began to see my pain differently. Rejection had taught me how to stand alone. Hunger had taught me discipline. Loneliness had sharpened my focus. The very things meant to break me had been training me without my knowing. I wasn't weak. I had survived what many couldn't. For the first time, I looked at myself without his judgment in my eyes. I saw someone stubborn, someone observant, someone willing to endure discomfort to build something real. I didn't need his permission to exist. I didn't need his definition of success. The anger softened. The sadness remained, but it no longer ruled me. Pain stopped feeling like poison and started feeling like fuel. Each memory of humiliation became a reminder of what I refused to return to. I stood up that night with nothing changed on the outside. No money, no support, no guarantees. But inside, something was solid now. I didn't know what success would look like. I didn't know how long the road would be. All I knew was this. I would build a life that belonged to me, even if it took everything I had left. Rock bottom didn't destroy me. It stripped me down to who I truly was. And in that silence, in that lowest moment, I finally met myself, ready to rise, not out of anger, but out of belief. The next step wouldn't be easy. But for the first time since that Christmas night, I was choosing my own direction. Change rarely arrives with noise. For me, it came in a quiet moment, born from exhaustion and need. I was working a small, forgettable job. Long hours, little pay, no promises. Most people pass through that place without noticing anything. I noticed everything. When you've lost everything once, you learn to watch closely. You listen. You learn. You remember. That's when the idea first took shape. I began to see patterns others ignored. Small problems that caused big losses. Simple gaps no one bothered to fix. The kind of things powerful people overlooked because they had never lived without comfort. I understood those gaps because I lived inside them. At first, it was just a thought, then a plan scribbled late at night, then a risk. I had nothing left to protect. No dopietaschen, no safety net. Failure couldn't hurt me the way it once had. So I tried. I invested what little I had, time, effort, sleepless nights. The early days were brutal. Plans failed. Money disappeared faster than it came. Some weeks, it felt like I was falling all over again. More than once, I came close to giving up. But something was different this time. Every failure taught me faster. Every mistake sharpened my focus. I didn't panic like before. I adapted. Hunger had trained me to stretch resources. Rejection had taught me not to beg for approval. Loneliness had forced me to trust my own judgment. These were the traits my father once mocked. He said I was unfocused. I learned to concentrate longer than anyone around me. He said I was too soft. I learned empathy and used it to understand people better than numbers ever could. He said I lacked discipline. I learned to survive on almost nothing and still move forward. Slowly, things began to shift. Not dramatically, not overnight, just enough to notice. A small win, then another. Someone believed in my idea. Then another person followed. The work started to speak for itself, even when I didn't. I met people along the way, some who helped, some who tested me. A mentor appeared when I least expected it, not to save me, but to challenge me. They didn't see my past as weakness. They saw it as proof. There were nights when everything nearly collapsed. Bills stacked up. Doubt returned. Fear whispered that my father had been right all along. But now, fear didn't stop me. It pushed me. I learned to take smart risks, to listen more than I spoke, to move quietly while others bragged. Each small success built confidence. Not loud confidence, but steady belief. For the first time, my life was moving forward instead of in circles. I still wasn't rich. I still struggled. But something undeniable had begun. I was no longer just surviving. I was building. One evening, after a long day, I looked at the numbers again. They weren't impressive to anyone else. But to me, they meant everything. They meant progress. Proof that I could create something from nothing. I smiled, not with pride, but with relief. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't about my father anymore. It was about redemption. Pain had shaped me, not shattered me. Rejection had cleared the path. Every door closed behind me had forced me to build my own. I didn't know then how far this journey would go. I only knew that the life my father thought he destroyed had quietly begun to grow, stronger than before, rooted in effort, sharpened by struggle, and moving forward with purpose. And for the first time since that Christmas night, the future no longer felt like a threat. It felt like an open door. Success did not arrive all at once. It came slowly, quietly, built from years no one saw and sacrifices no one applauded. Day after day, I worked while the world slept. Nights blurred into mornings. Small offices turned into larger spaces. One risk led to another, and then another. What once felt impossible began to feel inevitable. Not because I was fearless, but because I had learned how to endure. The business grew. At first, the numbers were modest. Then they doubled. Then they multiplied in ways I never imagined. Partners came. Deals closed. My name began to travel farther than I ever had. People listened when I spoke. Doors opened before I reached them. I watched it all with disbelief. Every milestone carried weight. Each success reminded me of the nights I had nothing, the days I wondered if I would survive it all. Wealth followed effort, but it never erased memory. Money solved problems, but it did not soften the past. One day, without ceremony, I crossed a line few ever reach. I became a billionaire. The world changed its tone overnight. The same traits once questioned were now praised. My discipline was called vision. My focus became leadership. My caution became wisdom. I accepted the applause with calm, but inside, I felt the echo of old wounds. Publicly, I stood tall. Privately, I carried scars no one could see. There were moments I stood alone in glass offices overlooking cities, remembering nights I couldn't afford a meal. The contrast was sharp, the silence louder than any crowd. Success had lifted me high, but it had also separated me from everything familiar. The greatest irony cut the deepest. I achieved everything my father once demanded without him. The family that defined success for me was gone from my life. No celebrations, no shared pride, no acknowledgement. The approval I once chased no longer mattered, but its absence still left a mark. He remained unaware, or perhaps unwilling to know. In his world, I was still the failure who walked out on Christmas night. Still the mistake he believed would fade into nothing. He never saw the life built from rejection. Never heard the name spoken with respect. Never imagined that the child he dismissed now shaped industries and futures. And part of me understood. If he knew, it would mean facing his own mistake. Success brought power, comfort, and choice, but also brought distance. Trust became rare. Relationships felt fragile. I learned that ambition demands payment, and the price is often paid in loneliness. Still, I didn't regret the climb. Every step was earned. Every loss taught me something. Every scar reminded me where I came from. I had become proof that rejection does not define destiny. Yet late at night, when the world was quiet and the noise of success faded, I asked myself a different question. What does winning really mean? I had everything my father valued: wealth, influence, control. But I had built on my own terms, guided by lessons he never taught me. I helped others rise. I listened to voices often ignored. I built with care, not fear. That was the difference. The rise had transformed me, but it had not erased my past. It had only given me the strength to face it. And deep down, I knew the journey wasn't finished. Because no matter how high I climbed, one truth remained unresolved. Success had answered the world, but my past still waited quietly, patiently, for a reckoning that could no longer be avoided. The rise was complete. The return was coming. I didn't plan the return. Life has a way of bringing you back to the places you swore you would never face again. A business matter, a name on a document, an address I hadn't spoken in years. Suddenly, the past was no longer a memory. It was waiting. The house looked smaller than I remembered. The walls that once felt towering now seemed worn. The silence inside was heavier, not with control, but with age. Time had done what anger never could. It had softened everything. And my father, he stood slower now. His shoulders bent slightly forward. The sharp confidence that once filled every room had faded into something quieter. When he looked at me, his eyes held confusion before recognition. Then something else. Schalt. The power had shifted, but I felt no triumph. Only a tightness in my chest. We stood facing each other, years of pain trapped in the space between us. The air felt thick, heavy with words never spoken. This was the man whose approval once ruled my life. Now, I realized how small his control truly was. I didn't come to prove anything. I had already done that. I came because the past demanded to be seen, not erased. I no longer needed his praise. I no longer feared his disappointment. The child who once stood trembling at that Christmas table was gone. I spoke calmly. I listened. And for the first time, I saw something unfamiliar in my father's face. Doubt. He asked questions he never cared to ask before. He learned truths he had ignored. Each answer pulled another layer away from the certainty he once wore like armor. Slowly, painfully, he began to understand. The son he cast out had not vanished. The failure he believed in had become something he never imagined. And with that realization came something heavier than anger. Regret. His voice lacked its old strength. His eyes dropped. In that moment, I saw not a ruler of a household, but a man forced to face his own choices. I felt no urge to punish him. Revenge suddenly seemed small. What mattered was clarity, perspective, the truth standing openly between us. I didn't ask for an apology. Understanding was enough. As I turned to leave, I felt lighter, not because the past had changed, but because it no longer owned me. I had faced a place where my story broke, and I was still standing. The reckoning was quiet, but it was real. And for the first time, the past was no longer something I ran from. It was something I had finally outgrown. I stood alone in the quiet of my penthouse, watching snow fall over the city lights, and I realized something I had never truly understood before. That ruined Christmas, the one my father thought ended my life, had done the opposite. It had built me. Every rejection, every insult, every moment of despair had laid the foundation for the person I had become. The life I had fought to create, brick by brick, was shaped by the very pain he had inflicted. For years, I carried anger, simmering quietly beneath my success. But now, I felt it drain away, not because he deserved forgiveness, but because I no longer needed the weight of hate to move forward. Letting go didn't make me weak. It made me free. I thought of him once more, the man who had tried to write the end of my story. I didn't seek revenge. I didn't want acknowledgement. I only wanted peace. Peace for the child I had been, and for the adult I had become. Christmas, once a symbol of loss, now meant something else. Rebirth. Transformation. The night that had crushed me had also ignited a fire I could never have imagined. The father who believed he destroyed a life had, unknowingly, forged a billionaire. I smiled softly, not in triumph, but in quiet acceptance. My journey had been long and hard, but it had belonged to me. The past could no longer define me. The pain that had once been my curse was now my teacher, my fuel, my proof. Forgiveness was my choice. Victory was never necessary. And in that moment, I understood fully. I was no longer a product of his judgment. I was the architect of my own destiny. Christmas had ended not in despair, but in the quiet strength of a life reclaimed.